Hi, I'm Jeff. This is Tropical Plants at 53 degrees north. So today we're working with this. It's an Oncidium Twinkle Cinnamon. And at first look, it looks to be in full bloom, which it is of course, and it looks to be nice and healthy. But if you look a little bit more closely, which I'll show you in a minute, the leaves are looking less than healthy. They have loads of black marks on them, lots of them are yellowing, there's no new growth, something's going wrong. So if you have similar problems with your Oncidium Twinkles, maybe this video might be for you. So let's jump in. And we are in. Okay, so I'm going to start off by looking at one of the two Oncidium Twinkles I have. This one is obviously an Oncidium Twinkle Yellow. They have a really nice kind of a name that makes them easy to remember. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous plant, full of bloom, and let me just tell you when I've had it from. It's not that long, to be honest. 22nd of October. So I've not had that a long time, and it is looking very healthy. There is one black mark just there, if you can see in the middle there, on the top of a leaf, tip of a leaf. One of them is yellowing a little bit, but the rest of them are looking pretty healthy. It's still in the media that it came in, some kind of, I don't know, coconut fibre maybe. I can't see what's going on in the pot, which is always an issue, but we'll deal with that once it comes to the end of its blooming period. But if I take you over to my Oncidium Cinnamon Twinkle, or Twinkle Cinnamon, you'll see that things aren't looking that good at the moment. Nice blooms, very fragrant, but the blooms are going over very quickly, and you'll notice that the leaves are yellowing, getting black marks on them, dropping off. So I'll just remove that from there so I can show you a little bit more closely. Okay, so there's no bug on it as far as I can see. That back bulb is blackening, but you would kind of expect that. I can't see any signs of new growth. All I can see are black marks on the leaves, and things just aren't looking quite as good as I expected them to. Now, at this time of year, they do tend to lose some of the older leaves on the bulbs that's already bloomed, and once the blooms have fallen off, then I would expect to see some new growth. But I don't think things are going quite as well as they did last year. So this one we've had, let me see, January 2020. So I've had it just over 12 months as I filmed this video. And definitely something going on. So what we're going to do is we're going to test a theory out, or a couple of theories. I've only got two of the cinnamons. I've actually got a smaller one up there, which I removed at some point, and I'm going to get them back together again. If you're wondering, there is a drip in the background. It's absolutely pouring it down outside for a change. So as we look at this Oncidium Twinkle Cinnamon, let me just talk you through what actually happened. So this was my first Oncidium Twinkle that I bought, as you can see, it's 12 months ago, just over 12 months ago. Seems like much longer. And I had it in its original pot for its first blooming. I think it did a second blooming for me, and I mounted it. Let me see if it does actually say. Now then, I've not read that properly. So I mounted it on the 15th of the 1st. I don't think I bought it then. I wonder if I've got it written down. No, I mustn't have been writing down in those days when I actually bought it. So it's definitely bloomed more than once. So I mounted it last January, and I definitely had it maybe a year before that. So it's sometime in 2019. And I mounted it because, well, I've seen others mounted. I think they look good mounted. They usually perform well mounted. And I knew I wanted to get it out of its original pot because it was difficult, it was impossible to actually see what was going on with the roots. And you know, with Oncidium roots, it's one of those, along with lots of other orchids, especially in this environment, a cool UK environment. It doesn't want to be over wet. So I wanted to keep an eye on what was actually going on with those roots. So I thought, well, I'll mount it and see what happens. It was one of my first mountings, and at some point throughout the summer last year, this is when the leaves started to get some marks on them. I was really pleased to still see that it bloomed for me and it threw up some spikes, but these leaves are just not getting any better. And I had a little think. I looked at the care conditions and the requirements. And by the way, if you want to know what Oncidium Twinkle care conditions are, I'll put a card up round about now. And hopefully you'll be able to have a look at that and see what the care conditions are. But as far as I'm concerned, I am caring for this just as I have done all along. And it was happy up until the mounting. So what could have happened? Well, my first theory was that it was something to do with temperatures. So over here we have a really nice specimen. I'll just put this one down. A really nice specimen of Oncidium sotoanum. Now this one, again, I've had this one a couple of years, and the only problems I've had with this one is sometimes it gets sooty mould on it. It does seem to have stopped since I sprayed it with a fungicide. It doesn't seem to be getting those. The marks that you can see on there now are actually the remnants of what was left once it had its last sooty mould attack about a month ago, but it seems to be okay since I sprayed it. So this is one of the parents of Oncidium Twinkle, and the theory was that this was one of the parents of, now let me just take you over to my Oncidium Sharry Baby. It was one of the parents of the Sharry Baby, and Sharry Baby are also prone to black leaf spots and marks and yellowing tips on the leaves. Now I understand from what somebody put in a comment about 12 months ago, I understand that there was some kind of a study and it was found that Oncidium Sharry Baby are prone to these leaf spots and leaf marks in higher temperatures. So tracking back, you would think that that is something to do with sotoanum, and you can see there are a few leaf spots on there, but I think, as I say, that was due to the sooty mould that it got. So this one doesn't seem to get the leaf spot, whereas the Sharry Baby does appear to get the leaf spot, but not in my environment. So following that through, I thought to myself, okay, well, it doesn't totally logically follow on, because I'm not having the problems with the parents or with the Sharry Baby. However, I have the problem, and I'm just picking it up again, with the Twinkle. So my theory was that maybe, even though it wasn't a total follow through of logic there, maybe the fact that this had been in some warmer temperatures, not direct sun, maybe that was something to do with these spots and marks on the leaves. I realised there are lots of holes in that theory. So somebody put forward another theory. This was Michael. Some of you may know Michael from his various comments, very knowledgeable on orchids, and his theory is that the moss bed that I've got on here is somehow restricting airflow to the roots. And this to me seems to be a far more likely theory, based on not only the fact he's been growing orchids longer than me, but based on the fact that I can actually feel it. This feels to me, it's like a hard casing on it. It was one of my first mounts, and I think I've overdone it. I've piled too much moss on there. I've put loads and loads of fishing line on there. I can actually see, I don't know if you can see the amount of fishing line. It was just kind of glistening in the light there. And you can tell that whatever's inside there is not going to get much air to the roots. So that could be the issue. So what I'm going to do, again a suggestion by Michael, I am going to unmount this and I'm going to try it in a different media. Now my sotoanum is doing perfectly fine in bark, providing that I've got a transparent pot so I can see what's going on, and I've got loads of holes in the pot. My Sharry Babies also are doing absolutely fine in their transparent pots and bark, along with the holes in the pots. But for a change, I thought we would try some coconut husks. So I shall take you through to have a look at what's going on with the coconut husks. Okay, so we're in the warmer side, and this appears to be greenhouse life at the moment. We've got coconut husks, we've got coir, and I'm trying to wash them all. So if you didn't catch that video, I'll put a card up for that too. That was quite a recent one, telling you all about coir and why it's so good, some of the benefits of it. But the major disadvantage of coir is the salt content, and this is where it's a little bit of a pain trying to wash it through. So the one that I've got over there, that was a full bucket at one point, and this appears to be one of my problems. I've washed it through, drained it through, but when you try and get the water off, unfortunately you lose a big pile of the coconut husk in the process, because obviously it's kind of floating around in the water. You can see it in there. It's far easier to do because obviously there's not as much of it, and the bigger chunks, so they don't get lost through the holes in the bucket. I realise this is more of a problem to do the system I've got going. I need to refine the system a little bit, and that way I'm sure once it's refined I won't lose quite as much of the the coir, that's the peat-like substance. So they're both from the same thing, they're both from coconuts. That's more from the pith, so that gives you like a finer textured peaty kind of a consistency. These are the husks, so these are more roughly chopped. So I'm going to use some coconut husks with my Oncidium Twinkle. Now, what the theory with this is that the coconut husks retain moisture within the coconut husk, but the moisture is more locked inside the husk. It's not like on the outer casing of it quite the same as it is with the bark chip. So that means that theoretically the roots will get more air. So I'll just take you back round to my Oncidium Twinkle over here. I know it's still in bloom. Some of them are dropping off now, and normally I would wait, but I really am keen to get on with this. And if it means that the blooms drop off even more quickly, well, so be it. I'm not going to cut them off. I'm just going to let them do the thing. I expect, looking at them, they're not going to last much longer anyway. And by the way, the coconut husks that I bought were just run-of-the-mill. So these are like reptile terrains that you put in these terrariums. They were much cheaper. Actually, if you want to try and buy some coconut husks in the UK, you can pay an absolute fortune to get them transported all the way from Sri Lanka. Doesn't seem to be anybody selling coconut husks for orchids, as it were. And if you do get any, then, as I say, they're not going to be anywhere near as cheap as this. This was £4.90 for a great big bag, 6 litres worth of coconut husks, so that should last me quite a while. So I've washed it through. I've actually washed it through a couple of times. This was much easier. Actually, I just grabbed a pot full of coconut husks and I just poured the water through and let it drain. Then I collected some of it, tested it, and it came out at about 90 parts per million, which is more than I really want. But, you know, I'm just going to take a risk. I'm fed up and mulling about with it. I'm just going to do it and see what happens. If the worst happens and it kills my Oncidium Twinkle, then I'm going to have to buy another one. I don't think 90 parts per million is going to cause too many problems, especially seeing as every time I water it, it's going to drain more of those salts through anyway. I'll just try and remember not to feed this one for a while it's still got a little bit of those salts inside it. So I'm going to get all the things together, and then we're going to have a go at unmounting it and see if there is anything left of the roots inside this hard shell of sphagnum moss. Okay, and we're back. So what have we got here? Well, we've got the coconut husks. So these have been washed through several times. I've already said ppm, parts per million, was about 90. I don't think that's going to cause them too many problems. I've also got a pot, I think it's about the right size, tons and tons of holes in it, put in by our soldering iron. So hopefully I'll be able to see what's going on there. It's not too big, hopefully. I've also got some charcoal. Now this charcoal over here, that's going to be the end of my clean hand, isn't it, when I touch that? I was hoping for some bigger pieces of charcoal, but this is what I've been sent. So I think this was a case of not totally honest on eBay there with the size of the charcoal pieces. They're definitely not the size that I was told, but they'll have to do. Now, why am I using charcoal? Well, because of the propensity in our country for wet weather, I'm really wanting to be very, very careful to make sure that these don't stay too wet. I shouldn't really have a problem, but I'll put a little bit of charcoal in. It should hopefully just keep it a little bit sweeter and a little bit drier. I do believe anyway, if you caught my coir video, that this kind of thing takes much longer to actually break down than bark. Bark breaks down much more quickly, so that's another advantage of using coconut products. So I'll just move those out the way. I'll just empty my little tray here of water, and we'll get on with unmounting this very hard compacted moss here. I'm wondering actually if I moisten it, it might be a little better. But what we'll do first of all, we'll cut off some of these pieces of fishing line and see what happens. I may well speed this up. Okay, and we're back. So, not looking good as expected. So these roots are not alive. I can't see anything. They're absolutely dry as a bone, despite getting plenty of water. But they're just, I mean, it's like paper. There is nothing going on there. I might as well cut them all off. These are all totally dead. So they didn't like the moss. They seem to like it in other people's videos, but they didn't like it in mine. No idea why. Maybe I just put too much of the fishing line on. Maybe they were done just too tight, but they didn't like it, that's for sure. You can see. So I'm just going to, some of these near the top aren't too bad, but there's certainly nothing new coming out here. Might as well get rid of that one. It's going to drop off anyway. So yeah, I'm not sure. Sometimes these things happen and you don't know why. So if anybody else has experienced something like that, but as you know with orchids, you know, it's still bloomed, it's not dead. They don't need roots to survive. The roots are an added bonus. That's what I'm telling myself anyway. They have a remarkable ability to come back again. You know, a lot of this stuff that they need is stored in the pseudobulbs. That's why they have pseudobulbs. So this now becomes a rescue plant, doesn't it? Which makes me think whether I should cut these blooms off anyway, but you know, I'm not going to, because I like them. We're going to give it a chance to come back itself. So I'm wondering whether that pot might be too big, bearing in mind there are no roots on it now. Oh, practically no roots. There's certainly no new growths. So that one, if it's in there, well, there is nothing around it. That's definitely not going to be good. So the question is now, have I got a pot small enough to deal with this? I'd better have a look. Okay, so this one's much smaller. I think that will be better size for it. Got lots of holes in it, as you can see. I've had this problem before. So I'm going to pot it up into here. I have got this other little piece here, which is also not looking so clever. So I'm going to unmount that one. I won't show you that one, and I'll show you the finished product in a minute or two. Okay, so there we have it, all potted up in its new home. Only a small pot, but loads of air around it. I've tried not to squish it down too much. I think this is definitely like a trait of people from temperate climates, because I'm so used to potting things up and firming them in, and I really don't think orchids like that. When I've seen other people's pots who grow them in much warmer climates, they're hardly putting any media in at all. It's very airy and loose around the roots, and this may be one of the issues. So I know it's really tempting to want to cut these lovely blooms off, but I'm not going to just yet. I'll keep them as long as I can, and we'll see if the coconut husks with a mixture of charcoal in there as well actually do anything to provide any kind of aeration in there and give it that root growth that it needs. So the thing for me to bear in mind now is that there are no roots in this. Because it's a small pot, fortunately it's fairly firm because the pseudobulbs are holding it in place. So it shouldn't be a problem there. It's just whether I actually get any root growth over the summer. So I have to keep a close eye on it and see what happens, and try not to over wet it, because all I'm doing there is wetting the coconut husk and the actual plant itself is getting nothing. So we'll see. Let's hope that becomes a rescue that works for me, because I really like that one and I don't want to lose it. So any comments, please put them in the appropriate section. I love to hear from people. I really don't understand sometimes, or I'll go and do a video and there are hardly any comments at all, and you wonder when so many people watch them and you think, well, is it boring? Was it not really what people wanted to see? Was it so good that they were so blown away by it that they were stunned into silence? You don't know, do you? Other than the thumb up or a thumb down, you don't really know what's going on. So if you've something to say, please do say it. It's great to hear from people, and I love the interaction. I love to learn things as well. And I hope I also provide something for other people too. So, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.